to the mid channel here, that basically from the low, from the value area low of this whole range to the all-time high would take us to about 94x, yeah, roughly. Yeah, and actually ADA overshot. Yeah, so I do feel that we have more growth potential, and I think part of the reason we have more growth potential when it comes to TRVL is because we are a small market cap. Yeah, right now we're trading at about $11 million in market cap, and ADA in this price range was about $500 million. So naturally it's a lot more difficult for a $500 million market cap token to get to the higher levels of valuation, because it requires just a lot more capital to get there. Yeah, so naturally for us, I think it's very, very feasible for us to get to $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 in the context of the Bitcoin bull market that's about to come. It hasn't even started yet, and you have to, people need to understand this. Technically, the Bitcoin bull market starts when Bitcoin makes a new all-time high and consolidates above the Bitcoin all-time high. Like right now, we're still into resistance, and there is still, with Bitcoin, there is still a bearish Elliott wave in play at the moment. There still is, you know. No one can predict the future, but when Bitcoin eventually does get past its own all-time high and it starts to get into price discovery, that is when the altcoins are really going to rally. That's when the altcoins are really going to pump. And the reason why the altcoins are going to pump is because a lot of people are going to join the party, and they're going to start pumping all the altcoins, and then we're going to market buy the altcoins and push it as far as they can. And the smaller market cap altcoins, something like TRVL, is going to be high on the list. It's going to be right up there on the radar, right? So it is very possible that we do get overextended prices in the bull market, very possible. And I think at the very least, I don't expect us to not get to the top of this range that I'm looking at now, which is our current range. So at the moment we're in the lower part of the range, which is under 9 cents. I think it's very, very, very feasible for us to get back to the high of our range, Yeah, this is our range, right? I don't see that as a problem, right? And I think that's got nothing to do with the project. It's got nothing to do with the tokens. It's got nothing to do with the tokenomics. It's got nothing to do with the marketing. It's got actually nothing to do with anything except Bitcoin. Bitcoin has this power over the rest of the market, and there's a lot of greed at the height of the Bitcoin bull run, and naturally there's going to be a massive flow of capital, and there's no reason why a token like TRVL doesn't pump. There's no reason why it doesn't pump, and it's going to go parabolic, and everyone is going to do very well. And it's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with anyone, right? I'm just excited to be part of the journey and sharing the journey with us all. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun year or year and a half. Yeah. Now, my idea for the tokenomics is not about getting to the all-time high, because I think that's going to happen regardless. Yeah. So there is an air of complacency about at the moment, because I think a lot of people already know that, you know. I think obviously the people who are already involved in crypto already understand how the Bitcoin bull market works. And so there is a little bit of an air of complacency, because maybe for most people, getting to the all-time high is enough. Yeah, it's enough. It's a 40x to the all-time high from where we are now. For most people, that's enough. And most people who are accumulating in their lows is going to walk away with life-changing sums of money. Yeah, most people will, and for most people, that's going to be enough. What I'm talking about when I talk about the tokenomics, or what I'm talking about, is about higher prices. In my imagination, I'm dreaming higher, I'm thinking higher, I'm imagining higher, and I think TRVL has that potential of higher. Yeah. And the higher prices that I'm talking about are based on technical targets that I have identified, right? And so if you take a Fibonacci retracement from the all-time high to the all-time low, I'm not doing it at dot to dot, I'm just kind of roughly picking the targets, and you do an extension on the log chart, yeah, then I have two higher targets that I have in mind. Yeah, I think $5.1 and 9.63 is within range of the current bull market. Yeah, I think that's within range if we just do absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. We just sit back and relax. Just long and chill. Just keep on accumulating and chill. I think $5 and $9, 9.6 are within range. And it's within this higher time frame channel that I've identified, which corresponds very nicely to this ADA fractal that I've also identified. Yeah, it's going to be a lot more expansive than ADA simply because we're a smaller market cap, right? So from this lower, from where we are now, and that's, I'm not taking from the value area low, I'm taking it from our current price, to $5.1, we're talking about 131x. And to the higher price of $9.6, we're talking about 244x. I honestly think that in the context of the bull market and this project, that this is achievable without anything further to do. Like, don't do anything, just relax, just sit and chill. Yeah, I really believe that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to take profit along the way. I've said that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't take profit along the way at significant levels. I have never said that you should never take profit. I've never said that. Yeah, I'm not asking people to hodl all the way to the top and never take profit and never sell. I think when you achieve your targets, you should take profit. And everyone is different, and everyone has different goals and different objectives in their lives, and I think that's fair and that's reasonable, right? For some people, they may be content with a 3x or a 4x, fine. Some people have higher targets, great. You know, like, we're all different, but we're all in the same journey together, and hopefully we're all going to get to our destination, right? But I think in the context of the bull market, getting to a 5.1 or to a 9.6 is absolutely within target, and Dtravel and TRVL doesn't need to change. Absolutely doesn't need to change. And right now, I'm a critic of the current tokenomics. I think TRVL has no value, but on large part in the Bitcoin bull market, the inflated prices are all speculative. All of the tokens are pushing higher prices. All speculation. It's all speculative. Yeah, there's no real value in these inflated values when the prices go up. Yeah, it's just the reality of most of the tokens, and some tokens are very exceptional. So of course the Binance coin is very exceptional. Not only does it represent a real world business, which is not the equity, but the transaction volume and the payments. So it has a real world use case. It's like the highest volume exchange in the world, but also obviously it powers the Binance Smart Chain network, which is quite expansive and it's quite significant, you know. So there are exceptions like that, and maybe ETH is an exception, and maybe Solana is becoming that kind of exception, you know. But on the most part, 99.9% of tokens, the inflated values are pure speculation. Pure speculation. There's no real value. Okay, so I don't see TRVL being any different. Like, that's just honesty. I'm just being honest with you. We get up to these prices, at $5. Okay, $5. What is $5? Let me just calculate it for you right now. I'll get a calculator out. Right now we're trading at, let's just say for the sake of argument, 4 cents. And that's an 11 million market cap token. And divided by, sorry, times, hold on, let me figure this out. So $5 divided by 0.04 is 125x. So 125x times 11 million is a $1.375 billion market cap token. Yeah. So for us to get to this level, we'll be trading as a what did I say? 1.375 billion market cap token. Yeah. And obviously we go up a little bit more, then we're hitting 9.6. It's almost another 50% almost. So then we'll be probably up at about $2.5 billion market cap. I think in the context of a Bitcoin bull market, it's very achievable. We're at 10 million now. I think 100x, getting from like 10 or 11 million to not 100x to the all-time high, just from where we are now, just exactly from where we are now, getting to the all-time high is about a 40x, So basically you're looking at about a $440 million token. I think a $440 million token in the context of trillions of dollars in crypto is peanuts. It's nothing. It's like a drop in the ocean. I think it's very easy for us to get back to the all-time high. And everything of all of that has got nothing to do with Dtravel, nothing to do with TRVL, nothing to do with the marketing. Yeah. And for all intents and purposes, the market's been pretty poor. And I think people need to recognize that nothing's changed. At the moment, nothing's changed. The reason why we're now holding the lows is because of Bitcoin. It's because of the bull market. It's because of the halving year. It's because up until October, people weren't buying, and now people are buying, and now they're looking at crypto, and now they're looking to invest in small market cap coins. And the reality is that most people who buy and accumulate will sell. Yeah, it's just going to happen. It's just like it's a future reality that we have to come to terms with now and decide what we want for the future for ourselves. Yeah. Now, selling you once like look, ADA sold, right? ADA sold into the highs. You see that? So the price went up significantly and ADA sold off. And ADA is a much more kind of popular, recognized brand. It's a layer one. It's got its own chain. You know, it's got a lot of interest, and that also sold. And that sold so much that the price dropped from $3 all the way down to 20 cents. Yeah, so not even ADA was resilient enough to withstand the selling. See that? See, ADA dropped 92%. 92%. So when it comes to the future for TRVL, I don't really expect any different. Honestly, I don't expect any different behavior. When we get into the highs, I think on the most part, most people will sell all their tokens, will dump all their tokens. Yeah. I don't see any different future for TRVL, and it's got nothing to do with TRVL. And I think that's people need to understand that it's got nothing to do. And I do appreciate the fact that TRVL has future potential because it's a deep in project. It may be more resilient during the bear market, but I think a lot will have to do with whether people sell the highs and then whether they look to reaccumulate the lows or not. Yeah. And so naturally, when you're looking at ADA, you can see that there was a little bit of reaccumulation. Yeah, you see that? And so naturally, when you take a volume pool, you will see that the value area high of the range was defended by the bulls. So the bulls were willing to reaccumulate at the top of the value area high, and most of these people have been selling at the highs. Now the volume has been pretty low in the highs, so actually I think there's a lot of people still in large positions at the lows who didn't take profit, and they just held, didn't they? And the thing about having the volume in the lows is that when you have volume in the lows, there is no pressure to sell. No one is feeling the pressure of selling the highs because they're in so much profit. Yeah. But what's happening now with ADA is a reaccumulation range, and now we've broken out from a mini reaccumulation range. That's what that is. It's a reaccumulation, right? So certain people sold the highs and they're reaccumulating because they still believe in ADA, in the project. Yeah. And we're possibly going to experience the same fate in the future. Possibly we will experience the similar fate where we will push up into the highs, up into the $9 mark, possibly. And then we'll fall back all the way down to 40 cents, 50 cents, you know, and there'll be a pullback of about 95%. Yeah. And that is when we will know what happens. You know, that's when the jury will be out. Will people look to reaccumulate, or will they look for lower prices? You know, like we have to see what happens in the future and how the reaccumulation pans out. And naturally, the lower it gets, the more people will sell. That's how it works. Yeah. When it comes to the markets, when the price is pushing up, that's when people buy. People never like to buy the lows. They like to buy it when the price is pushing the highs, and then they never like to sell the highs when the price starts to fall down. Then they start selling. Yeah. And then basically they'll walk away with, let's just say for the sake of argument, they entered here and the price comes down to here, and then that's when they sell. They'll be content with an 8x, a 9x, when they could have sold the highs and walk away with a 324x, but they didn't do that. And part of the reason why people don't do that is because they get caught up in the hype. They get caught up in the narrative of the moon. The moon, it's always about the moon. It's always about Mars and super cycle and all of that rubbish, jargon that rears its head at the peak of euphoria, in the peak of the bull market. You have to be aware of the future. The future is coming. So I'm just preparing us for the future. And so naturally, I think most people will be looking to sell. And then what they will do is they'll sell most of their tokens. I will be looking to sell most of my tokens. And then I'll be looking to reaccumulate in the future, as long as the project is still on track in my mind. Because, you know, who knows about the future? Who knows about what's going to happen in the future? No one can predict that. But there's no reason to believe that this is going to behave differently. And the reason why there's no reason to think that this is going to behave differently is because this is not Bitcoin. This is not Ethereum. Yeah. And I want people to be aware of that. When you look at Bitcoin, so if I now go into the Bitcoin chart and I look at the Bitcoin index, yeah, look at the Bitcoin chart. The Bitcoin chart, it just went up and up and up and up and up. And this is the log chart. If I was to put this on the regular chart, oh my God, it's like crazy up. Like, can you imagine if you know, people entered Bitcoin here, and then it just went up, and then it went up, and it went, didn't stop going up. Like, it was non-stop. It's like up and up and up, right? And so naturally, the reason why we like, if we were Bitcoin, you'd never sell, would you? Why would you sell? You don't need to sell. Like when you're an early investor and an early adopter in Bitcoin, and the price just keeps on going up, you don't sell. You don't need to sell. People who entered at $2 or $10 or $40 or even $600 or even $1,000 or even $3,000 or even $10,000, they don't need to sell. They don't care, because the price just keeps on going up. And why does the price keep on going up? The why is really important to answer the why. And you have exactly the same price action on something else like ETH. ETH pretty much has very similar price action to Bitcoin, you see. So ETH also started off low and the price never went down, just kept on going up. Yeah, but then when you look at other tokens, it went down, it went up, it went down, it went up. Let me have a look. Let me just see if there's any old tokens here. Let's have a look at Link, for example. Well, Link also kind of went up, so that's not a good example. Let me see. Here, look, Cake. See that? So Cake was really bullish token in the last bull market. And it went up all the way up to $40 from the low here at 20 cents. And it's a very different price action, because it's not just going up and then up and then up. You see how it's going up and then down, right? And the reason why you have this kind of behavior is because there's no value for the token. The token has no value. And really, if anyone is familiar with Cake, they will know that the tokenomics was pointless. It was an unlimited supply, and fundamentally the only thing you can really do with Cake was stake it to earn more Cake, but that was coming from an unlimited pool of tokens, and they had buybacks with their transaction fees, but it was never enough to overcome the inflation from the tokenomics. Yeah, Cake has recently changed their tokenomics because of this significant deficiency that they experienced. Yeah, it took Cake a markup of 225x plus a long decline, bear market decline. Yeah, look at that decline. That's terrible for a token. And the reason why there was a decline in Cake was because the tokenomics was absolutely trash. Absolutely trash. They had unlimited supply and there was no value. And in a bear market, that was detrimental because people were not holding. They weren't hodling. They were just dumping their tokens. And do you see this price increase here? Do you see this increase here? The reason why Cake has now suddenly increased in value from $1 all the way now up to $3 down to $2.50, because finally they've changed their tokenomics to a fixed supply. Finally, they fixed the supply. Yeah, so they had to change their tokenomics to achieve this result. And it's taken them how long to achieve that? And after all of this drop, so imagine how many people they went up in value and then it lost as well. And I think we have to contemplate the future for TRVL, that there's no reason why people are going to hodl this token. And this is what all the conversation has been about. This is the conversation that I've been having with different people. A lot of people have been talking to me and asking me about the tokenomics and about the future and about price targets. And I'm trying to explain to people that we're following the path of ADA at the moment. I don't see any deviation from the path at the moment. So when I pull up ADA again, this is acting as my like roadmap. Let me pull up again and people can see. Oh my god, I've lost it. Go back to this. Chainlink, Ethereum, Bitcoin. There you go. So I actually think that we're following ADA. So I don't think we need to change anything to follow ADA, to be honest with you. I kind of feel that we're on the path. We follow the ADA fractal. And I don't really think anything needs to change for us to continue on this path. I think most people are going to be happy about that. Now, my idea is slightly more evolved than just following ADA. In my mind, I'm thinking higher. I'm thinking $23.50, which are technical targets here. And I'm thinking $125, which are technical targets here. Yeah. My mind is on these targets, these higher targets, right? And in order to achieve those higher targets, you have to give the token value, like real value, like absolute value. And you have to give people a reason to hodl for higher, hodling for higher. Yeah. So at the moment, people are, the first opportunity people are getting, they're selling into the highs, because that's just what we've seen in the price action through the whole of this down trend. Selling into the highs, selling into the highs, selling into the highs. Yeah. So people aren't actually incentivized to hodl, and eventually in the future there's going to be so much demand that eventually the price will push up. You know, people will still sell, but the price will push up, and it will get to such a point in price where the USD value will be so much compared to the TRVL value. So you won't, like, and this is what people need to understand, like, if your portfolio has gone up, let's say we are trading at $5, let's say that this fractal plays out and we do hit these higher fib targets, yeah. And so when I'm looking at ADA, I'm seeing exactly the same behavior, because if you take a fib extension, you see, I mean, ADA didn't even get to the fib targets. See that? So it was kind of, it only got to the top of this channel. So, I mean, maybe we won't even get to $5. Maybe we'll just get to about $3 or something like that. But anyway, let's just say for the sake of argument, we do get to $3, right? That's already a 77x on the value of your of your USD value, right? 77x, yeah. And you have to think, like, how big is the TRVL network right now? Well, right now we have about 2,600 hosts, 2,600. And even if we were to 100x in the next year, and I think that's unlikely, and I think it's unlikely because we just don't have strong marketing. You know, we've had really weak marketing. And so right now, I mean, to get from 2,500 hosts to 250,000 hosts within the next year, let's just say, let me just quickly calculate this. Within the next year, you need 684 hosts onboarded per day. Yeah. And when I look at the Telegram group, when I look at the output on the bot, that tells me how many hosts are coming on board right now, I'm not seeing 600 per day. Yeah. The reality is we're not going to get to 250. We're not going to get 100x on the number of hosts within a year at the current trajectory. And of course, in the future, it may speed up and it may become faster and faster and faster, especially towards the end of the bull market. But I think if we were to get even a 10x to get up to about 25,000 hosts by next year, that would be a massive achievement. And if we want to get to 25,000 hosts by next year, so 25,000, let me just quickly calculate that, minus 2,600 divided by 365, that's 61 hosts onboarded per day. I'm not even seeing that. Yeah, I think at best I'm seeing about like 10 or 6 or 5 or 7, you know, hosts onboarded right now per day. Yeah, so we're like 1/6 of that target. So at the current trajectory, if we're getting an average of, let's say, 5 per day, then by next year, we're only looking at an increase of 100%, like a 2x, potentially a 2x. We'll go from maybe 2,500 to 5,000, the current trajectory. Yeah, that's just the reality of how fast the network is growing at the moment. Yeah, that's just, these are just pure numbers. I'm not like making this up. It's just where we're at now, right? And so naturally, if you have an increase in value in token price, and most of it's speculative, of 100x or 50x or 60x or 80x, the value of the token is going to be well overpriced. And then if I was to go to the token, the TRVL utility, the network just isn't big enough. It won't be big enough to warrant a high valuation of token. Yeah, if we even 10x at 25,000 hosts, and let's just say on average each host has 2 listings, so you have 50,000 listings, I still don't think there's enough network activity to warrant the higher valuation of TRVL value. Yeah, and also remember, a lot of these features aren't even developed yet. They're not even functioning yet. Yeah, so the assumption is that all of these things are going to come into operation, and then there's going to be network activity, and how much network activity is going to warrant TRVL usage. And then at the end of the bull market, are people going to hodl for higher, hodl for higher, hodl for higher? Are people going to hodl for the long haul? Are people going to hodl for 10 years thinking, okay, in 10 years time, this is going to become something so valuable that I can't afford to sell. I have to buy. I have to keep on buying. At the moment, I don't see that, right? At the moment, I'm not seeing that, right? And so naturally, I think if we have to decide as a DAO what we want, are we satisfied with these values, or do we want higher? And so in my mind, I came up with a tokenomics idea, and I presented, and I really came up with the idea overnight, like really instantly. And it wasn't, I really didn't put much thought in it. It was like a bing, it was like a bing. And I was thinking to myself, the best way to go about tokenomics is to copy a successful model, something that already works. That was really where I came up with my idea. I was just thinking to myself, well, if you want to copy someone, if you want to mimic someone, if you want to aspire to someone, you'll go for the best. Yeah, you're not going to go for mediocre. You're going to go for, so what's the best out there right now? What's the best tokenomics model out there right now? Well, naturally, ask 100 crypto enthusiasts, and I bet you 100 crypto enthusiasts will say Bitcoin, right? So in my mind, I was thinking to myself, well, why don't we start off with Bitcoin? Really? Why don't we begin with Bitcoin? Like, if you want to update your tokenomics model, why would we not start with Bitcoin? Why would we not look at Bitcoin and try to mimic Bitcoin as close as possible? Because naturally, Bitcoin works. We know it, Bitcoin. It's the most successful tokenomics model ever. Ever. Like, it makes sense, right? And so I was thinking to myself, well, we have some very similar things like Bitcoin. So we have a network of, let me go back to the website. So look, first let's establish Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is a network of computers, right? Let me see if I can Google it just quickly. What is Bitcoin? Is there anything visual? Does it explain it? I don't know. Never done this before. I'm just making this up. I'm freestyling. Here, what does that say? What is Bitcoin? Oh my God, it's a long explanation. Doesn't really explain it. Oh, maybe this. nope, 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 nope. Maybe this is best. So Bitcoin is a physical network, is a DPIN, is a decentralized physical network, right? And you've got these connections of Bitcoin computers all over the world, as in this diagram, yeah? And what these computers are trying to do is solve a puzzle, a computer puzzle. And whichever computer solves this puzzle wins the block reward, So the block reward is a periodic reward. So it's based on time. It's not based on network activity, it's based on time. So every period of time, you have this reward, and whichever computer solves that puzzle obtains all of the reward. And this is just a continuous process, repeating process. And eventually what happens is every period of time, every 4 years for Bitcoin, that block reward diminishes by 50%. It reduces by half, right? That's Bitcoin. It's fundamentally, that's Bitcoin. And so what Bitcoin was able to do was create a rewards program which incentivized and catalyzed the network growth, and at the same time increased the value of the token by diminishing supply, right? So they have a fixed supply, but also they have diminishing supply that comes onto the circulating network. And so what I was thinking to myself, if you imagine each one of these bees as a property or as a listing, yeah? And if you have all of these listings competing for a periodic block reward in TRVL, you basically have the same kind of network, yeah, where you have this period, could be a month, where, and it wouldn't be winner takes all, it would be a pool. Everything would be put into a pool where you have network activity would be vacation bookings, and depending on the value of the contribution of the bookings to the network, then you can distribute the periodic reward in TRVL. And I was thinking, you know, for Bitcoin, they began by issuing 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. It comes to about 7,200 Bitcoin every day. And then I was thinking maybe we could have like a period of a month, and we could have 8 million TRVL per month. And so naturally, as you had bookings and reservations all across the network, then the contribution of the bookings would go to win this monthly reward, and it'll be every month. And what would happen is, as the network increased, the competition for the reward would also increase. And so naturally people will then be eligible for less reward, but it would all be dependent upon their share of their contribution in terms of TRVL value with the transactions that have been made. Yeah, so basically Bitcoin. So basically what I was imagining was Bitcoin. I was imagining that every one of these network nodes could be a property. And as people were booking reservations all across the world, then those listings would become eligible for this block reward, and their value contribution would go into a pool. And every month, depending on the value that they'd contribute with respect to all of the other properties within that listings within that bookings within that month period, they could be eligible for that reward, and it would just basically would become like Bitcoin. And then every year you had this diminishing supply. So maybe in the first year it would be 8 million per month, and maybe after year 2 there'd be a quartering and it'd be like 6 million, and then year 3 it would be like 4.25 million. Basically you're copying Bitcoin, yeah, but instead of using a computer network trying to solve a pointless puzzle, your network are listings all the way around the world connected together, and the network activity would make people eligible to win this or compete for this reward. It's basically my idea was to copy Bitcoin, right? Basically, that's all I said. And I think if we start there, then we're on to a winner, because Bitcoin is clearly a winner. And so naturally in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, why don't we copy the winner? And then we can adapt it a little bit and make it even a little bit better. And the reason why we can make it a little bit better is because we're chain agnostic. So if you can create the narrative of store of value, and you have a chain agnostic store of value, then it's already quite attractive, because if someone in the future perceives TRVL as store of value, because why? Because the model is Bitcoin. Yeah, it's all about the model, the tokenomics model. And why is it Bitcoin? Because not only is the tokenomics model Bitcoin, but then it's a physical real world network. So that secures the value of the token in the same kind of reward structure as Bitcoin. Yeah. But then people in their wallets, they can be like, well, I've got Matic. They know, you know, Bitcoin is store of value, but rather than change it to Bitcoin or bridging it or something like that, they can say, oh, wait a minute, TRVL is also store of value. I don't need to buy Bitcoin now. I can just buy TRVL and store value, you know. And naturally, as the network grows, the value increases. The value of the network increases. It's the same as Bitcoin, basically. It could be Polygon. You can have a store of value TRVL in Polygon, Binance Coin, Ethereum. Down the line, it could be Solana. You can have this chain agnostic store of value, which is just like Bitcoin. So that's all I was like imagining for the future. But fundamentally, I think it's also quite psychological, because if you copy a tokenomics model, copy Bitcoin, and you create the same narrative, then psychologically people will hodl for much longer, and they'll be less inclined to sell, especially when you have a diminishing period of periodic reward structure. Yeah, where over time the amount of TRVL that comes into the network is reducing, and it's reducing, and it's reducing. Yeah, just like Bitcoin. When you have that idea, you implant that idea in people's minds, then psychologically people are going to hodl for higher, hodl for higher. And I think a lot of people that in the future will be thinking to themselves, well, this is Bitcoin, or this could be Bitcoin. I probably am going to have some I won't even sell. So you're not going to get into a situation where at the peak of the bull market, wherever it is, everyone sells everything. Yeah, and that's really what we don't want. We don't want people to sell everything. Yeah, we want people to hodl for higher, hodl for longer, and that is how we get to higher prices fundamentally. That's my mind. That's the best way to go about this. But I think the first conversation to have, rather than making this complicated, is, do we want to be like Bitcoin? Would we mimic Bitcoin? Would we want a model that is very similar, the reward system that is very similar to Bitcoin? Now, if the answer is yes, then there are other ideas of how to improve on Bitcoin. Yeah, but fundamentally, let's just have that conversation first. There's no point complicating it and adding all these kind of other ideas. Let's just focus on that first question. Would people be interested in making this TRVL like Bitcoin? Yeah. And so when I look at the website TRVL, I see that there's a 295 million circulating supply, 1 billion total supply. So there's another 700 million that's going to come into circulation. I guarantee you that everyone is going to sell before that the rest of those tokens come into circulation. Not only can't we see the vesting schedule, but really that's a deflationary that's a deflationary tokenomics. This is a very deflationary. This is an inflationary bearish tokenomics model, what we have right now. because whatever you're buying now is going to be diluted 3x in the future. This is very bearish. Yeah. Now, I think to get to Bitcoin, what you need to do is take the 700 million circulating supply and lock it up. Just lock it up. Like the 295 that's in circulation, fine. That's out already. The 700 million, lock it up. And the only way to access that would be for a periodic reward system based on network activity, and it's all connected to our physical real world network. And you mimic the value in terms of percentage terms, and then depending on the contribution in terms of percentage terms on a monthly basis, you will reward hosts. I think if we can get, if we understand, if we accept that that is probably the best path in the first instance, then it's very easy to make this even better than Bitcoin. Very easy. That's the next conversation. There's no point having the second conversation if we don't first have the first conversation. Is would people be interested in making TRVL like Bitcoin in the first instance? And so right now, I think this current tokenomics is problematic. I don't think it matters, because I still think we're going to get to higher prices. But at the end of the day, I think most people are going to sell. And I think the only way we can get people to not sell is if we have a tokenomics ideas that mimic Bitcoin, that's very similar to Bitcoin. Anything else, I think no one is going to hodl if it's not Bitcoin. Really, I don't see it. Personally, I don't see it. And I'm not going to hodl if it's not Bitcoin. If it was Bitcoin, I would probably hodl. Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking to myself. What's going to make me hodl? Yeah, I've got a bunch of tokens. Just thinking to myself, what would make me not sell them all? What would make me hold on to a percentage and hodl for higher? Like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking to myself, what is going to make me hodl for higher and hodl for the long term? And the only tokenomics model that would make me interested in hodling is Bitcoin. I would only be interested in that kind of tokenomics. I wouldn't be interested in anything else. If it's Bitcoin, then I'd be interested. Yeah. And it brings me back to my idea that in the past you had MySpace and then came Facebook. Facebook basically did MySpace better, right? And I'm thinking the same thing happened with other kind of businesses, you know, like if people are old enough to remember VHS and Betamax. Betamax was clearly the better product, but VHS came and did Betamax better. And so naturally what I'm thinking to myself is, if we have an easy sell, which is the easiest to sell tokenomics model, which is Bitcoin, and we implement that tokenomics model into our network, it'd be a very easy sell, because then people would ask us, what's your tokenomics? We'll say, well, it's Bitcoin. How? Well, it's a periodic reward system based on network activity with diminishing diminishing supply over time, and it's a fixed supply, and you can only access those tokens through real world network activity, and the network activity is physical real world network economic activity. Yeah. And then the other question, I mean, there's some other questions, and some of these questions were put into the Telegram group. And one of those questions or problems was, how do you prevent bad actors manipulating the system to begin with? Well, in the first instance, I don't think anyone who's involved, any of the hosts right now who are involved, are bad actors. I think actually anyone right now, the early adopters and the early investors, should be highly rewarded, because we're the ones who are making Dtravel succeed by participating. You know, we're the ones, without us, Dtravel wouldn't succeed, because we're the ones who came first. And we're the ones who believed in Dtravel first. We're the ones who came and bought TRVL first. I don't see anyone who's involved right now as a bad actor. Yeah. And I think anyone who's involved now, whether they're hosts or whether they're properties or whether they're investors, they should be highly rewarded, And then when I think about Bitcoin and I think about the beginning of Bitcoin, yeah, anyone who was invested in Bitcoin here or here, were they bad actors? You know, were these investors bad actors? Were the people mining in the first instance, were they bad actors? Did they manipulate it? I think those kinds of arguments are very poor. And I think we should just look at Bitcoin and see how Bitcoin succeeded and the narratives that Bitcoin used to succeed. And I think personally, I think if we want our token, if we want TRVL to get to the higher prices and to become a global success in the shortest space of time as possible, then we should mimic Bitcoin. And I think if we were to do that, I think a lot of people would be interested in TRVL. It would be very easy sell to a lot of big investors out there. And that's basically it. Everything else can be layered on top, like, and we can have a conversation about what comes next. But in the first instance, I think we should just we should think about whether we should become Bitcoin or not. And these are conversations to be had, and I think we should have these conversations. And I think that's the first conversation to be had. Everything else can come later. I don't need to complicate the conversation with other ideas, because I have other ideas of how we can go about staking within that periodic reward system. But there's no point having that conversation if we're not even interested in making TRVL like Bitcoin. That's the first conversation to be had. Would you be interested in making TRVL like Bitcoin with a Bitcoin reward system? Just copying it, basically. And to achieve that, obviously the DAO would have to make a decision and vote for it, and it'd be a significant change to the way the tokenomics is. But fundamentally what I'm saying is you lock up all of the circulating, the rest of the supply, the 705 million, lock it up, change all of this. I don't know what all these vesting numbers are. I don't know who they go to. I don't know where they're, like, I don't even know anything. I think we redo it. Whatever's out is out. And the 700 million, let's lock it up. Let's create a periodic reward system based on network activity. If anyone transacts, if any host rents their property, then when the transaction is completed, the value of their transaction is converted to TRVL value, and that is put into a monthly pool of value, and as a percentage they will access the periodic reward. And as a result, I think that that would be a massive catalyst for people to come and use Dtravel. We'll see a massive migration of hosts coming to Dtravel in the context of that kind of tokenomics idea, because then people would no longer be looking at their properties as just properties or vacation rentals. They'd be looking at their properties as TRVL mining rigs. Their properties, their vacation rentals would be TRVL miners, and also, and this is what's interesting, you could get into a situation where people were willing to give even bigger discounts to travelers, because on the back of their vacation rental, they knew that they could be accessing this reward, this block reward, so you're generating we'd be generating a lot of interest. It'd be very easy to attract hosts to our network if we had a Bitcoin reward system. And all of what I'm saying is, like, people are like, well, what about that 3% give back? Here, look, operator rewards. Vacation rental operators earn TRVL on every completed booking powered by Dtravel Direct to offset fees, right? And I'm going to show you now. Yeah, I'm going to show you. Just log in. you can see that. So basically, I've had 15 bookings, and 3% of this value, 3%. Let me just calculate it for you now. So 37,092 times 3%. So that's $1,112 dollars in value. That's 3%. But obviously the reward is in TRVL, and so naturally TRVL has gone down in value. So when I first began, since the first booking, the price was, I think it was end of July 22, the price was at about 6.2 cents. And so naturally, on average, the price has gone down. Yeah. So I think on average, I think it's about, let's say for the sake of argument, 4 cents in terms of TRVL. So actually it's about 20%, 25%, maybe a third. So actually the USD value in terms of TRVL is probably about $800, 800. So for those transactions, where is it again? So I've only got back about $800, $800. You think what I'm providing for the network, I'm providing 3 properties. Yeah. 3 properties, prime locations in London, and I'm turning over a lot of bookings. Yeah. And my reward in all, and this is 1.5 years. After 1.5 years, I've only got back about $800 in rewards. $800. I just think it's really poor, honestly. Now, I don't think it's going to be enough to attract people, to pull people off Airbnb. I just don't think it's going to be enough. Despite all of the problems that Airbnb has, I just don't think it's going to be enough. Because despite everything, Airbnb is still, on the most part, it's still recognized and it's still trusted. And on the most part, hosts aren't paying 15%, they're paying 3%. So there isn't really an incentive to pull people off Airbnb. However, if people could use Dtravel to do the bookings and participate in this reward, a Bitcoin reward scheme, and if they could use their properties to mine TRVL, just like Bitcoin miners would participate in the Bitcoin network to mine Bitcoin, it's a whole different conversation. Yeah, it's a completely different. I'd be trying harder to bring bookings onto Dtravel, harder. I'd try and get all my bookings onto Dtravel in that future. And so I think the first conversation that we have to have is, would we be interested in making this into Bitcoin, creating a Bitcoin tokenomics model? And I think we should have that conversation. I mean, people should have that conversation. And I think the DAO should decide. And if the DAO is in favor of some kind of Bitcoin model, then there's other ideas about how to go about the staking and other things, other ways of improving everything. All right, I think that's that. And next week is going to be a really big week, because I think Dtravel are going to launch their forum. So let's see what happens. You know, let's see what they suggest. I think, like, whatever happens, we have to create a store of value, because the reality is that that is what people are looking for in this day and age. But in my mind, you can't beat Bitcoin, and let's just go with Bitcoin. All right, have a wonderful Sunday, and then we'll chat tomorrow. Until tomorrow.